Okay, so let's start with a question let's go with Michael. I work for a manufacturer of energy-efficient luminaires, fluorescent and LED light sources. How do I get our products to be considered as part of this campaign?
Well, ultimately, we are still working out a mechanism to involve manufacturers. The campaign is ultimately for end users, sites themselves, and they select whatever technology they want. We are just promoting energy efficiency. It is open to all technologies. But we are working on a mechanism to try to help sites maybe evaluate and find products through a more formalized means, but we do not entirely have that finalized yet. Alexandra made a good comment about, it was really necessary for the University of Central Florida to spend the necessary time to evaluate all the different lighting technologies, and they found it very valuable. And probably after they did their first parking structure, it went much quicker the next couple of times. So we recognize that it is helpful for sites who may not be familiar with all the different technologies out there and all the different manufacturers out there of the technologies. But at the same time, we're trying to limit we're not trying to limit. We're trying to just make the mechanism better so that the interactions with site owners and manufacturers is the most productive as possible.
Great, thanks, Michael. Another question: does this program apply to smaller businesses that have 1 or 2 parking lots? I would say that yes. And certainly we've configured the categories of awards so that if you're a small lot, you can still have a chance of winning, depending on your savings and the percent of lots that you submit. Michael, anything to add on that one?
1 to 1,000 or 1 to infinity. Yeah. No. Please. Every site adds up to our total goal. And just because it's a mom and pop or a one-off site, we'd like you to help save energy. And but at the same time, if you have 100 sites or 1,000 sites, we'd still like you to save energy.
Great, thanks. So Nate, this question is for you. As the gentleman from Kinko discusses an impressive level of outdoor lighting control, is there any concern that hardware being installed and multitudes of lighting fixtures will not be supported by future operating system upgrades on iPads and PCs? Having several now useless PC accessories that no longer offer software upgrades, it's always on the back of my mind. Any response to that, Nate?
Sure. It's a good question. When you make decisions about platforms to build off of, it's certainly a very important consideration about interoperability with both the end device, the PC, or the iPad, what have you, and whether or not it will be viewable long term. The platform that we've selected, which is the Tritium company, but the technology is called Niagara AX. It's not the only, but it's probably the predominant one of its class, which creates a kind of an open architecture, if you will, for developers and manufacturers to build off of, much like Apple putting out an API for the iPhone and everybody going out to build an app for it. Somewhat similar. We think we have chosen the best one, and everything's viewable, through a standard internet browser. And so the end device is pretty. We're agnostic to the end device. So it's at the end of the day, there's always some level of risk there, but we've tried to do our due diligence to minimize that risk.
Okay, great, thanks. The next question for Alexandra. Did the UCF parking lot lighting retrofit include controls, or were the controls present? Alexandra?
Yes, that's a good question. Controls were present. We just looked into replacing the actual fixtures themselves. They needed an update anyways, and so we actually, and something important that I need mention is that we also not only, we had to accrue a little bit more of a cost initially with the higher, more efficiency lighting, but we also are now seeing a higher life cycle and warranty on those products, on those actual products themselves. So no, controls were in place already, but we were just actually retrofitting the actual lighting itself.
Michael, this question is for you. Just, I guess, can you please re-outline sort of the technical assistance services that the LEAP campaign will provide and sort of how the application process works?
Sure. It's a great question. So technical assistance is somewhat, I don't want to say nebulous. We provide the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory. We're one of the Department of Energy laboratories, so we're going to provide technical assistance. But because we are taxpayer funded, we are not, and for many other reasons, liability and other issues, we will not do designs. We're not going to come in and say, well, you know, you should space these fixtures 10 feet apart, blah, blah, blah. We're not going to do that. But what we can do and what we ask for is, first, we'll start by asking questions. What type of lighting do you have? How much lighting do you have? You know, but we want to get into specifics. You know, what's the square footage? How many fixtures? What type of fixtures they are? And then also, what are your site's lighting requirements? You know, one thing we often find out is, you know, if a site requires 10-foot candles or 8-foot candles, which are real existing lighting requirements, first thing we're going to say, well, wait a minute, maybe you need to rethink those requirements, because energy savings is really hard when you're really pushing for high light levels. So one thing we're going to do is try to look at existing practices and try to see where energy savings are possible. If a technology that's just old, for instance, mercury vapor, which is an extreme example of very old technologies being used, we'd say, oh, well, that technology is so old, and it pretty much has a very limited life at this point. You're going to have to move away from it one way or the other. Here are some options. But then what we're going to also do is, so we're going to look at what your existing equipment is, and operation schedule and that type of stuff, and then start proposing stuff. Well, are you considering sensors? If so, here's some stuff you should know about daylight sensors. If you are considering occupancy sensors, here's some things you should know about occupancy sensors. We're going to try to point you to resources like the CVA specifications, or if there's a technology that you're interested in, maybe it's LED, and you're saying, well, we have a question about correlated color temperature. We might point you to a document produced by the Department of Energy's solid-state lighting program, where it really walks through the basics of color and how all the different values work. So we're going to try to push as many different resources that are pre-existing out there, mainly because there's a lot of great ones, and some of them, and I don't want to reinvent stuff, nor do we want to reinvent stuff, but we're also going to try to say, oh, we'll consider this, or look at these 4 options, or these technologies might work compared to what you're trying to do. It also is going to depend on each site. It's really hard to say what any one type of thing is, but so in general, no design work or similar type of aspect of it, but we are going to push existing resources, try to provide technical specific questions, and provide some existing resources and materials where we can.
Alexandra, on the UCF project, what led to the selection of T5 technology instead of LEDs? And again, I want to stress that the campaign is technology neutral, so we'll take savings any way we can get them. Alexandra, T5 over LEDs?
Yes. From my understanding, the T5 was selected beyond other products on the market. It was just what fit best for us. I can't really argue with the fact that LED are probably what's best available on the market right now, and specifically we were looking for a particular product that we knew once we put into this facility that we would be able to put into all of our facilities, because not every parking garage is created equal. We wanted to make sure that this was something that was a more malleable product, and from particular reasons, I know one of which that we were really excited to see is that this, without having to be replaced, we're looking at an anticipated life of these fluorescent lamps for future repair expense up to 3 to 4 years. So that was also very attractive to us with regard to these particular lights. I think ultimately they just won out. It was what we needed, what we were looking for, and throughout the selection process, this is what actually stood up to us as, the product that we were looking to ultimately put into our garage throughout the campus.
Thanks, Alexandra. This question is, we are in the final installation phase of a lighting retrofit project in one of our parking lots. Can we still enroll in the LEAP campaign? the lead, anyone that is eligible to participate in the campaign, as long as the retrofit happened after January 2010, and then you can participate up until November 30th of 2013. So the answer is yes, you're eligible to participate. I'm scrolling through questions. Does this program apply to transit authority and other public entities? I would say yes. We're trying to we're actively trying to recruit participants of any public or private type of building, or any owner manager, even parking lot owner and management companies. This question is for Nate. We are looking at fixture-level motion sensors on a MH2 T5 surface lot project in series with circuit-level photocells. It seems to us that there's very finite level of control will lead to the lowest possible kWh use. What are your thoughts on this approach versus the more complicated web-based controls?
I think I understand the technology. I've seen the. It sounds we haven't. I personally have not implemented a project like that, so I'll preface it by saying that. But that sounds like a good approach from some projects I'm familiar with. Actually, here around the Charlotte area that I've seen. If you don't need to have a lot of variability in your schedules, if your site's going to sit there and do what it's going to do day in, day out, then find something that works well. And I'd say, you don't really need to have the ability to sign in and make changes on the fly or get those sorts of those alarming features and stuff like that we are interested in. If you keep in mind that each of our property managers manages 20 to 30 sites, there's kind of there's more impetus for us to give that level of information. Whereas if there's a facility manager that has one parking lot they're responsible for, and they can be on call, so to speak, to respond to issues quickly, then it's probably less important that they have access to all of that granularity, and there's probably less motivation to spend the additional money to get that. So to me, it sounds like a good approach.
There's another question. Have you evaluated light-emitting plasma lights, LEP lights? We've reviewed and have been impressed. Have any of you heard of or have any advice on light-emitting plasma lights?
I've only heard of them. I don't know anything about them.
This is Michael Mark. Yes, light-emitting plasma is a form of HID technology. It's specifically like metal halide, only it is missing the electrodes. The electrodes are a weak point in many types of lamps, and so by getting rid of the electrodes, you are increasing the life of the lamp. That being said, it's a very much different form factor of a light source. So it just as it's similar to metal halide, it requires an entirely new type of fixture, both from an optical and thermal point of view. Currently, there's a handful of LEP manufacturers of the actual light source, and then there's also a handful of manufacturers making fixtures for them. So going back to one of the earlier questions about technology changing, that's definitely something to consider. What happens if manufacturer A no longer makes the product? It happens to many technologies, but it's just right now with 3 or 4 manufacturers, something to think about. One of the limitations of the technology is the lumen output range. Many other sources, whether it's metal halide or fluorescent or LED or even induction, have many different output settings. LEP, because it's still new, they don't have as many light output options. They're numerous. They're actually very high lumen output products, but if you want maybe a low lumen output product, you might have a harder time finding that. As I said, that is one of the disadvantages of it. An advantage of it is it can be dimmed pretty easily, which is new for most metal halide technology. Metal halide can dim, but it's not always friendly to it, whereas LEP can dim much further. There's, I believe, a color shift when you start getting to the low end. But it's being used. You're seeing more installations of it. I believe a town in Indiana has installed them for most of their streetlights. And if you do a little Googling on stray light technologies, you might find a large installation of it.
Thanks, Michael. A couple of logistical questions. Someone's asking about subsidies at the beginning of the webinar. We're not, the campaign isn't providing any financial assistance, but we are providing sort of resources to existing financial assistance. If you check on the LEAP website, you'll be able to find a section called Financial and Technical Assistance, and it'll detail. It has a downloadable spreadsheet that we'll be keeping up to date. That you can sort by type of by market, by location, by type of light, things like that. Another question on the campaign awards: how baseline KWH and results will be verified. Michael, do you wanna take on that one?
Well, we're doing two different methodologies. One, we're doing initial calculations. We're just asking for data, and we're doing the calculations, or you can do the calculations through the initial data. But when we do move to verification for the award process itself, or any savings that seem significant and need to be verified, we're still working out the exact plan. If there's existing metering on site, we'll try to take advantage of that. If not, it might be some spot measurements where we verify fixture X is installed and a rough idea of what the operating frequency is. That is the current plan.
Thanks, Michael. So just a couple more questions, and then I'll throw it up to Karen, Marina, and Paul to just give us some closing thoughts. Nate, do your controls at locations integrate motion sensors in addition to dust and dawn controls? If so, have you experienced any problem when combining the two?
Good question. We currently do not have any occupancy-based. There's a variety of challenges associated with that. Because we are a circuit-level control, if you will, and not a fixture-level control like I went over, we don't have the level of granularity that you'd like to have if you're doing occupancy-based, such as an occupancy sensor on every pole or every other pole. So that's one challenge that we would face. The other is basically how to get the signal from the occupancy sensor back to our central control panel. Would likely require wireless communications or wire to be ran, which would again be cost prohibitive. I see our program eventually moving towards wireless fixture level control at some point in the future. We've piloted it, and it wasn't as successful and robust as we were looking for. It doesn't mean there aren't technologies out there that may be, even now, but our experience with what we used didn't meet our needs at this point. And so I would see the implementation of an occupancy-based input would be at that time, where we do have fixture level control. And so I see us potentially moving towards that in the future to get even better